All right. Welcome to the show. Welcome back. Welcome back. It's been a while. I have a special guest with me today. We're going to be talking about all things World of Warcraft. And just to give a quick synopsis for those who may be unfamiliar, it's a video game that came out in Tom. Did it come out in 2005?
I believe it was 2004. I think it was the end of 2004.
Came out at the end of 2004, and in the realm of MMORPGs, massive multiplayer online role-playing games, this has been, was, and it's debatable whether it still is a juggernaut in the space. It changed gaming.
Absolutely.
And steel yourself, really think about whether or not, listen to this and think about whether or not this will be a good choice for your life to actually start playing this game. And depending on how you do, for me, and let's start at the beginning, dude. When I first started playing MMORPGs, it was my obsession. It's what I just fell into the fantasy realm, and it was like all I wanted to do all the time. Now that I'm a little older, it's a little different. I'm able to have a little space with it. But tell me, Tom, tell me a little bit about when you first started playing the game.
Yes, that's a good question. So I think I joined the game. I was in 5th grade, and I was actually trying to think about how old I was. I know it was around the time the Burning Crusade, which was the first expansion pack in the game, came out, which would have been January of 2006. And I remember getting it. One of my best friends growing up, his name was Cody, and he was he was just trying to get everybody on it. And I finally got it, and it was right when the Burning Crusade came out, and we just pretty much like there was a group of like 5 or 6 of us, and we went over to each other's houses, brought our PCs, brought our laptops, and totally did the South Park thing. You know what I'm saying? Not to the same extent as the South Park thing, but
you weren't pooping in buckets, and your mom wasn't.
Exactly. But we would have them all around a table and just kind of get it. You know what I'm saying? And those were the good days of the game too. Like they were just. It was a lot simpler. It was a lot harder to kind of like get gear and get things. I mean, if you think about it too, like they've re-released these now, and that's what I play. Like they've re-released Burning Crusade, and that's what's out now. But things were so much harder for one because PCs were not as good. So your graphics weren't. There just wasn't as many. It wasn't as easy to get stuff done as it is now.
And nobody
joined.
And back then, nobody knew nobody knew the quests. Nobody had like documented all of the different mechanics for bosses and stuff.
Right. And there were add-ons. Obviously, YouTube was not as big of a thing, but the add-ons weren't as good. You had like things like Wowhead and what was the other? Thoughtbot was another website you could go to and kind of just read up on things, but it wasn't as simple to get. There wasn't as much time and testing put into like what talents did what is, and so people now are like speed running, right? And it's that wasn't like a thing back then. It was just like clearing the content back then.
Tell me a little bit about your first character. Do you remember who it was, what it was?
Yes, I do. So the first thing I created was a hunter. And his name, I think I named him after a Pokemon. I think it was like Sceptile or Salamence or something. You got to keep in mind, I was in 5th grade. And I got him up to level 42, and it was so hard to level back then. Like you brought up with the quest, like there wasn't any, now I have an add-on that says it brings up your map and it's like, oh, go to this area and find the stuff, but so hard to level. And me and a couple of my buddies paid for power leveling, and I actually got banned, got that character banned. Like, it's actually a funny story. We paid for the power leveling, and we all went over to do like hang out at somebody's house, and we couldn't get on our accounts because the power levels were on our accounts. And the same night that I got, like, two of us got banned for power leveling, his Xbox 360 got the red ring of death when that was a thing. And we were
No.
like, dude, what do we do? There's nothing.
The
There's
universe
nothing.
conspired to stop you.
Literally, it was so bad. And so at that point, when that account, that they didn't even give me like a window. They didn't even say you're banned for a month and then come back. It was like, this account is shut down. So then I
Wow.
created a new one. I know, it was weird. So then
Describe that feeling. Like, were you
dude,
attached to the character?
I think, I don't know. I honestly think I would be today. I'm more attached to my characters than I was to that character for some reason. I don't know if it was the power leveling or just a like camaraderie with playing with your friends or what it was, but I wasn't as attached to that character for some reason. Or maybe it was doing the whole power leveling thing that kind of like whatever with it. And also at that point too, I was very much new to the game and had no idea what I was doing. It's like I didn't even know how to play that character that well. So I think now that I've like, know how to play most classes and everything now, it's definitely different. I have more and just, I don't, today I'm still with things in everyday life I'm just more sentimental with, than I was back then. And so like if I lost, and especially now that they've added achievements and things like that to the game, like there's some benefits to retail now, like the whole achievement system. I have achievements on that account that go back to right after that account was banned, so like 2007.
And you can't go get those again. Like, some of those achievements are unobtainable.
Right, exactly. And so at that point, when that hunter got banned, I created a new account, which is still the account I have today. So that was, made in like early 07 probably. And there's achievements on there that are back from 07, 08, that you can't get today, which is cool. So I think if I got banned today, it would be a lot different story. But I wasn't as attached to the character. But when I made that new account after he was banned, I made a druid, and that's pretty much what I played on for a good little bit after that.
Right on. The one of the things I wanted to share was the really cool thing about the World of Warcraft is, if you're listening and you're not quite sure like what we're talking about, it's a game that shared a similar design philosophy to another game called EverQuest, where the developers created a living, breathing fantasy world. So the main character of the game is the world itself. It's just a constant. It's like a constant. It's unknown and unknowable when players first arrive, and then it's almost like if you're playing Dungeons and Dragons or you're reading a fantasy book and you're just dropped into that environment. You're given a sword and a shield, and you're told, this person needs some wolf pelts, and you're just like, oh, I guess I'll go slaughter some wolves and get this guy some wolf pelts.
Right.
And before you know it, you're going in dungeons, you're raiding the other opposing horde or alliance, and you're living out your fantasy essentially in this world.
And it takes time to go through. I mean, and today there's a lot of open world games, but like we were just talking about back in 04, there was not a whole lot of just open world games like that. And the map itself, like you could spend, I don't think you could, if you were to walk around or if you have a mount ride around, whatever, it would take, I think, over a full day's play to see every area, and get from one area to the other.
Yeah, and the way they designed it too was every single person on the game plays a class or a character, and everyone needs each other because the world is unforgiving. Like the creatures in there, the challenges in there are really tough. Like you can do it on your own, but it goes way better and way more efficiently when you're playing with other people.
Absolutely.
So let's go back, because one of the things that really interests me is, just to jump ahead a little bit, because we've been playing together recently. We're on the Burning Crusade Classic. So they in 2019, I think, they restarted the Warcraft experience. They made servers that were just vanilla World of Warcraft Classic, and then they released the expansion for the Burning Crusade, which is the first one, and they're about to release the third expansion, which is Wrath of the Lich King, which everyone kind of agrees is those three expansions or games are the essential classic Warcraft experience. So me and Tom, we've been playing, and I hopped in a raid with you the other. I'd never been on any raids in Warcraft. When I played back in the day, I didn't know. I came from EverQuest into Warcraft, and it was like the time in my life in that transition was high school going into college. So like I wasn't gaming as much as I can now, or when I was in middle school, but I hadn't done anything back in the day. The highest character was like a 55 druid. I had a Death Knight when they came out, got him to 72, but I didn't really know what raids were or how to do any high-end content. And I hopped in. You invited me to join you on a raid last week, and I hopped in, dude, and we're on Discord, and you're just leading the crew, dude. There's like 24 of us, 40 of us, and you knew what to do, you knew how we needed to perform. So, and yeah, I guess I'm just your name on the game is Tidder, Tidder, right?
That's right. Yeah.
And all your characters are amalgamations of that name.
So they're not all amalgamations of that name. They're all different, but I have, hold on one second. I'm gonna have to cut here. Hang on. We got some people going to lunch.
Yeah, go ahead and mute. I'll keep talking. Yeah, because it tripped me out. Because one of the things that really surprised me was when I asked, how many characters did you have, and you said you had every single class at level 70.
Yeah. So they're not all named after Tidder, but it's just I made a name from. So my first character that was named Tidder the name actually came from when I was playing basketball with the same people that I joined with, and we were on the school basketball team. And anytime we'd like miss a shot, we'd say, "Oh, Titters." We were just goofing off being kids. And so it was actually right around the time when Wrath of the Lich King originally came out, and I made a Death Knight, and his name was Tidder. And so I had the Druid for the end of the Burning Crusade, and then the Druid, I leveled the Death Knight. I liked the Death Knight a lot. I liked the idea of the Death Knight, and I feel like the Death Knight might have got 80 before the Druid, but I don't remember. But I really liked playing that Death Knight, and the Wrath of the Lich King is kind of when I started like leading raids, tying into the other question and doing that.
Back in the day when Wrath came out originally?
Yeah, dude.
You were leading raids?
I did. I was young. I was in like 7th grade, and I did this. So I did the same thing. So I'm really a fan of the GDKP, it's called GDKP now, but back in original Wrath when I played, it was called gold bidding. It's the same thing as a raid, but instead of going in with a guild, you go in with just a bunch of strangers or people from your guild on different characters that are also, able to raid that tier of content. And it was it's when I started doing those around the end of Wrath of the Lich King raid leading, but Ice Crown Citadel. But I remember thinking at the time too, it's like, dude, I'm in 7th grade now, and here I am like raid leading and having all this this say over different people and playing with like 20 or 30-year-olds, but I'm just a kid at the time,
How does that happen? I'm so interested in this. Like, how?
Dude, so I don't know. Like I've always been, it's a very good question. I haven't thought too much of the answer either. But
what's your mindset when you approach the keyboard when you're in middle school and elementary? Are you going for fun? Are you compulsive?
Business. I'm going strictly for business. I'm going to get it done. I'm set out to be the best and do the best I can.
Yeah.
No, it's weird, right? Like I've always been super into certain things, and I think like I don't know. Like you know, even in everyday life, obviously, I do feel like, and you've seen it. I mean, shoot, we've planned like a convention together and done the entertainment. You know, like I'm very good at organizing people and seeing where, you know, I'm not as good, like obviously in front of the camera and stuff like this, but like the behind the scenes guy where I'm like, okay, I know you do well in this area, so you do this and you do this. So I think I just have a good read on people maybe, and what they're good at and stuff like that. And that's kind of something I've had since back then. And I think that's part of the reason I love the game so much, is because there's a niche for that. And you can, you know, if you're good at that type of thing, you make an excellent, and just have a little bit of knowledge about different bosses and different mechanics that those bosses have, that you can put that skill to good use there, you know?
Yeah. What was it? What was it like? Were there any conflict moments internally or in the game when you were coming up, getting your voice heard? Because I mean, just from my perspective, the thing I was worried about, why it took me, you invited me to come play like this time last year, and I was like, there will come a time.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember that.
And the thing that was stopping me was because I had this, I kind of always felt the community was kind of toxic. I felt like it was a bunch of rabble rousers,
Right.
you know. So I'm interested in like, yeah, how was it for you getting your voice heard that young in that environment?
So I think, you know, you mentioned it before too, and one of the other things is like you need other people to play the game. And like, you know, the best example is like some of these guilds that are you know, people take this game pretty seriously. Like there's a people big in the classic that we play right now are big into this website Warcraft logs, and you can go into Warcraft logs and you can literally see every every ability, like not just how much damage you do and how much time it took to kill a boss or whatever, but like every food and potion that was consumed. There's just a lot of logs and details for that. And so you need a lot of different people to fill different roles, even from a guild standpoint. So it's like, okay, you need somebody who can go and review the logs. You need somebody who can manage the people in there. You need someone else who can raid lead, you know, to make it successful and make it how good people are at this. You need a lot of people filling in those different roles. And so back to your original question of how did I make that niche, is like I used the other people, and I didn't use them for that, but like I saw what they were good at and made it useful. So like I came in and I was good at the, you know, so for example, in the runs, we did one of the easier tiers of raids, but like back when I was leading a lot of those per week on the harder and current tiers, I had people, and you know, this is a month or 2 months ago, I had people in my group, like I had somebody doing the raid leading, I had somebody keeping track of the loot and what dropped and how much it sold for, because then you have to say, okay, this item. So I would actually do that part. I would do a Google Doc spreadsheet and write down, let's see, you got the Blood Paw Mangus Blade. So like I would write down the item name, write down who bought it, and then write down the price. And then that price gets divided up at the end, kind of like you saw. So like in the raid we were in, I did all of them because it's an easier one and it's short. But when you're doing it for a long period of time, you kind of just, to make it go smoother, you need people doing different roles. So I handled like the loot back then. I had someone else doing raid leading. So back in the day when I'm in 7th grade, like the guy who was my guild master was very interested in doing the runs as well. And I had him helping me a lot. And then it's always been a thing, even in the runs I've done here more recently, that like whatever guild I'm in, a lot of people have the same mindset I do. They have like, be very versatile, right? Like have different characters that if somebody's out for the guild raid, you can bring in one of your other characters and fill that spot, and just kind of have a bunch of characters that are raid ready and be versatile in different classes. And so I've always had that. So back in the day, I was plugged in with a guild, and you know, I kind of was the one to initiate and organize and say, hey, we're doing this raid on Saturday night. We need people to come buy loot and people to come help, carry the DPS and stuff like that. I got it organized, but then I had other people in the raid with me helping me run it at that point as well.
Wow. So so you're in middle school. Your mindset is, I want to be the best. How do I be the best? I need to learn, what all these skills do, what these weapons are worth, how can I, because one of the factors of playing the game is the economy is like a real thing in the game. Like things, the more money you have, the better you can be, and the more equipment you can get to be stronger. So
Right.
so when your mindset going in, and back in the day, was when you would log in, it was like, I'm logging in to improve not only myself but everyone I'm playing with.
Yeah, I'm logging in to improve, and I think also, especially back in the day more so than today, you've heard parts of where we come from and our backgrounds and stuff like that, and it's just like, well, I had that sense of connection with the other people in the game, that like, okay, we all come together with these different skill sets, like, and we'll, I had real friends on there, and I have people I'm cool with on there today too, but I have a lot more friends in life than I did back then. I did a lot of hopping around between schools and this and that, and it was hard to nail down like that same crew. I had left that school and was in a different one, and it was just the friends I had started playing with weren't around as much in the game anymore. And so it's also that sense of like connection, and everybody being able to do, offer something different to the raid. But I definitely think that like the knowledge of the boss fights and just really paying a lot of attention to what each, every boss is different, and when they have a different mechanic, if you have a knowledge of those, then and are able to explain that to a group of people, and then call it out when that ability happens and stuff, that's pretty much what there is to raid leading.
So the guild that we were doing it with, we were raiding with last night and last week, Sweat.
Right.
Is that your guild? Are you the guild master?
I'm not. So no, I'm not the guild master of that guild. I when I first joined Classic, I had my priest was my third character was my paladin, and I remember this guy. It was when phase 2 or tier 5 was the current tier. They were recruiting in trade chat. They were like, hey, we're doing a GDKP, a gold bid of the current tier. We full clear it all. And I was like, oh, I'm interested in that, and he said, hey, I'll get you in next week. And so I went in with them for just one of their pug groups. Pugging means not just guild. It means bringing in people from random different people, not just people from your guild. And it was just like an aha moment. Like it made me, like, it reminded me a lot of the one I was in back in the day, during the other, back when I was in middle school. And yeah, so when I went into that one raid with them, obviously I wasn't in the guild yet, but it reminded me a lot of the guild I was with back in middle school. And the guy leading it, the guild master, reminded me a lot of the guy that used to help me do that, the runs I did back in the day, who was also my guild master. And it was just this vibe I got, right? I was like, wow, like these people play a lot like I do. They have a bunch of different characters. Like they want to get them all geared and be the best. And they're not on their main characters right now, but they still have a lot of knowledge about the class they're playing. And that's the thing too. Like these people, right? They would come in, their items aren't great. Like you can do, to be a good player, like obviously the gold and the items help, but like these people were coming in green and blue items, not the epics, and doing absolutely crazy DPS, like really doing the DPS you could do, your average player can do in all epic items with just your Joe Schmo gear, right? And I was like, okay, this is the place for me. So I ended up
they were gamers, dude. They knew
they
they
were
knew how to
they were
play.
gamers, dude. Exactly. So I added the guild master who was leading that one run on the on like the chat, the real ID friends chat or whatever. And I kept saying, I was like, look, dude, like, let me know if you have an opening. Let me know if you have a spot. Like, just kind of kept following up with him. And it was actually crazy how it worked out. The next tier, it was about a month later, I'd say. I had started leading the runs at that point, and he came.
Your own, like not even affiliated with the guild?
Exactly. So I had started. It was right when that phase ended. So when phase 2 ended and phase 3 came out, which was Illidan and Mount Hyjal, they quit doing the GDKPs and just started focusing more on the guild. And I kept asking him, like, when are you going to start doing the GDKPs of this tier? And he's like, well, we're figuring it out, we're trying it, whatever. He's like, but we just got a second raid team started, so it's kind of hard right now. And I was like, well, keep me posted on if you have a spot, right? And
This is really cool because as these phases drop, everybody's trying to figure out how to clear it as effectively as they can, all at the same time. So like everyone in their own individual guilds, everyone's trying to figure out how do we do this.
Well, and I have some experience with that. I got to experience the final phase of Burning Crusade with Sweat, and I'll kind of end this question with that too, if you want. It was a pretty cool experience back in May when we just went in on the first day and just literally, like it's in the name, sweated through it. I mean, we just spent time in there wiping and ended up finishing 8th on the server.
Wait, like eighth guild to clear it once it was released?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. On our server, but our server is a good server. So
it's a real good server.
Mm-hmm. And so we were the 8th guild to fully clear it on our server for that tier, which was cool. But we spent a lot of time doing it. Like a lot of these guilds that are top in the US and top in the world. There's a lot of like Chinese guilds too that just know it. But they'll spend a lot of time like on the public test realm, which is, it's the same stuff and you can access the new content early, but it's very glitchy and it's just not the same feel as the regular game. They've spent a bunch of time on there practicing and stuff like that. We didn't. We just kind of went in on release day and did as much as we could. And then instead of rating our normal schedule, which would be Tuesday, Thursday, or the other team Monday, Wednesday, we went in Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then Monday we finally ended up full clearing it. But like the bosses towards the end, like there's six bosses in the new raid, and we blew through the first 3 pretty easy, but we had like 20 and 30 wipes on some, which wipes meaning deaths. So like we tried it about 20 to 30 times on each one of those before we finally got each one of them, but it paid off. It was cool.
Right on.
But back to the original thing is so I ended up leading my own GDKPs, and the GM who I did the one run with, he ended up coming to one of mine about a month later, one of my GDKPs, and he was like, he had the same experience as you. He was like, wow, I think he saw me in a little different light at that point, rather than just this guy coming in with an undergeared character doing decent healing, even with the gear I had, to like, wow, this guy can raid lead and he would be actually a good member to the guild. So what ended up happening was he came to my run. He said, let's work together and do GDKPs together. And we did. And I did that for a couple weeks, just doing GDKPs, like merging kind of my groups and their group. And then sure enough, they had a spot open up and I got in on their raid team, which has been awesome. It's probably the best, not just like gamer wise either, but just like they're all hilarious, and like I said, we all have the same mindset, and it's probably been even as much as I love that guild that I talked about before from when I was in middle school and how much they helped me out with doing my runs back then, it's been a better experience than that. They're really been a great experience. I like everyone in there. It's a lot of fun, and like I said, they're really good as well. One of the guys who was in our runs last night, he's like, if you go to Grobbulus and look at overall players with boss damage, he's like number 10 on the server for like does the most damage.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so, man. So fear, right? Pharaoh.
Yeah, fear. Yeah. So he here's actually how crazy he is. He has three DPS warriors, three different warriors that are all DPS, and they all have
All level 70.
all level 70 in insane gear. As a matter of fact, the legendaries too, you can get it. They're rare drops, the orange items, which aren't. There's not very many of them. He has two warriors with both Warglaives of Azeroth, which are pretty hard to get in the game. It's orange items instead of purple, and so he it's his other warrior named Turch that has the record for like that much damage. Not necessarily fear, but his other that second warrior's right behind his other one.
What? Why would you want three? They're all
Of this,
spec'd the same.
so it is interesting. So like for me, I have a second druid and a second priest at 70, and druid, priest, shaman, paladin are all very versatile classes. You can be a healer, DPS, or tank, pretty much. Um, and so that I see having two classes, but warrior, like there, I don't see the point. But like apparently it's a thing. Apparently a lot of people do it. Like I guess when you're just so good at that one class, or whatever, you make a lot of them so that you can go, he's on both of the raid teams in Sweat, so he has a warrior for each of those teams, and then he has a third warrior that he brings to like the GDKPs, which are the pub groups and stuff.
Oh, that's right, because there's lockouts. You can only do so many raids on one character.
Exactly, and he's so good at that class. He wants to bring what he plays best to each of those runs. So yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
So I want to go back a little bit. I want to scale it back a little bit. Well, actually I have a guild question first.
yeah.
So the way guilds work in the game is in EverQuest, which is kind of like where I came from. The bigger your guild was, the better. Like there was really never, like you could basically run two, three, four different splits of one raid each week. Five
Mm-hmm.
splits, six. You could go infinitely. So you could literally, one guild could have 150, 300 people, and you could do quadruple the loot every week because you just split it up with different raid leaders.
Right.
How does it work in Warcraft? It seems like the less people, the better kind of a situation in a guild.
Yeah, and so that'll vary, expansion to expansion too. And I can't speak for retail because I'm not as much of a I don't hold on, I gotta pause for 1 second.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah, I was asking about the guild, but now that we're here, let me ask you about like classes. Like what would you say is like what have you felt about the most fun versus labor intensive? How do you like to play kind of a thing?
Absolutely. So um my my favorite thing to do in the game is heal. There's healing, tanking, range DPS, and melee DPS. So um really five different roles you can do. You can be melee, ranged, tank or heal. It's actually four. I don't know what I'm talking about. Anyway, and my favorite aspect of the game is healing. It's obviously a lot. Um, it's different. All roles are very different. I think what I like, it is definitely less competitive than DPS. It's very hard. Like, we were talking about Turch and him being 10th best damage on the server. It's very hard to get that. There's people that just spend hours like figuring out how to maximize their class play. Like they spend a lot of gold doing it, redoing enchants and gems and stuff like that, just so they can really do it. It's super competitive. Healing's not as competitive, but I don't know what it is about healing for me. I just really I really enjoyed it. And it's Sunwell, the current tier, has had a lot of really healing intensive fights, especially during like progression, kind of like we touched on with going in there the first week. Some of these fights were just like insane amounts of healing. So healing is my favorite part of the game. But as far as classes go, there's 4 classes that can do that in Classic WoW. Retail's a little different. They've added one more class that can heal, I think, but the main 4 are Paladin, Priest, Druid, and Shaman. Um, the strongest healers right now in Classic are Priests and Shamans. I think Priests would probably win hands down right now. Um, but they, I like my favorite classes would be my Druid and my Shaman. And that even when I played in retail back when in Wrath and Cataclysm, those were my favorite classes as well. And I like how versatile they are. You know, with Wrath Classic coming out here in a couple of weeks, we're going to get dual spec, as they call it again. So you can have 2 talent trees and just switch between them. So, for example, on my Shaman and Druid, I can be a ranged DPS on my Druid and then switch to healing, or on my Shaman I can be melee DPS then switch to healing on him. They're super versatile. So yeah, definitely those 2 because of the versatility, and then Priest and Shaman. Priest can also be ranged DPS. I'm sorry, Priest and Paladin. Priest can also be ranged DPS, and Paladins can heal, tank, or melee DPS. So I'd say Druid or Shaman for sure.
Those are your favorites?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I haven't I'm currently trying out all the different ones now. Right now I like the Warlock and the Paladin the most. But
What
yeah,
spec are you playing on your Paladin right now?
Retribution right now.
Retribution.
DPS.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
that one's
find it.
fun.
What's that?
I said that one's fun. That one's fun.
Yeah, I find that I enjoy I like DPS healing and then tanking in that order as my three.
Yeah. What about melee DPS? Is ranged and melee the same?
Well, that's it's like a different style. That's why I like it. I like getting close quarters. It's like kind of fun to duke it out when because I'm used to the Warlock where I'm just constantly casting and moving and doing all sorts of stuff.
Right. And that's why I differentiate, obviously tank, healer, DPS are the 3 roles, but there is a big difference between melee and range DPS. Like you said, it's close quarters. Like some bosses, for example, abilities will only affect the melee. Like they gotta get out. Like I don't know if you noticed in that fight we did last night, the last one, that dropped the cape, like all the melee was having to run out when the enfeebles happened, where all the range just got to stand still. Or there's certain instances where like the melee can all be grouped together, but the range have to be like 8 yards apart or whatever. So it is, I think they're both DPS, but they are a different play style because of, like you said, the close quarters and stuff like that.
Which reminds me to answer the question that I'd forgotten about guilds.
Yes. So let's hop back to that. So with
Yeah,
guild, you asked if it was, is it like EverQuest where
the
and
more
by the
people, the
way,
better.
right. And by the way, EverQuest was a huge, I know I don't think there would have been a WoW without an EverQuest. And as
Oh,
a matter of
dude,
fact,
it was so trippy when I came in. I started a month and a half ago, and I
yeah,
came in, and I realized the thing that was keeping me from playing Warcraft was one, the culture around it. I was kind of like iffy about, and then 2 was just kind of like the graphics were they just felt kind of kiddie and cartoony, and I was like, eh. But like when I finally came in a month and a half, it was so interesting. It was like they took the design of EverQuest and just made it seamless, is what they did. Like it really was, because I didn't expect when I went into that first cave. Like I started out as a gnome, and I'm in the gnome Dunmoreau starting area, and
yeah,
there's a quest to go into a cave, and I've got to kill a certain amount of troll things and then kill a leader troll, and like I'm having to strategize and move slower than I expected to get to my target. And I had to drink and eat. And I was like, wow, I have to really pay attention and take my time moving through this world because everything's going to kill me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's so much planning that goes into it, even with little things like that, like you're talking about, which I think is just part of that. It's not just go and face roll and bam, 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 it's done. There's a lot of like strategy to it as well, which is huge. But and I think when they started, obviously there was Warcraft, which was just a computer game, not an online game. And I think when they started developing World of Warcraft, they took some people they hired people from the EverQuest team. So I think that a lot of the roots go back to EverQuest. Like I think the original retail classic and Burning Crusade WoW had EverQuest developers. They
Dude,
used to work there on the
it
team.
I really was like, this is EverQuest, but better. I was like, I
Right.
couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe some of the design choices they were making that were
Yeah.
similar, but it was like they didn't really mess with the ingredients. They
Yeah.
just made the ingredients better.
Better. Right. Exactly. That. And see, I love, like you said, the cartoony feel. Like that's, some of those games, like what is it, like Elder Scrolls Online and stuff. Like they almost look too intimidating because they're so realistic and not as cartoony. I think the cartoony like adds to just that aspect of fantasy that just appeals so much more to me, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and
It makes it seem a little easier than those other ones, maybe, or a little bit more rewarding, or whatever it is. I can't quite put my finger on it, but something like that.
yeah, it's interesting because whatever they did, whatever they did to make the game a game, it's really, really just fun to play. The
Mm-hmm.
mechanics, the time between clicking an attack and seeing a response, everything is fluid and it's all like the graphics. I think I think they knew what they were doing. They're like, we're gonna make this thing a thing that can play and be fun to play forever, dude. Like it
Yeah.
wasn't they didn't try to push themselves in the graphics area because they were like, if it's fun, it doesn't really matter.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. And so back to your question about the guilds, it definitely varies expansion to expansion, and I can't speak for retail because it's still changing, but with classic um, they released the original vanilla classic WoW, and a lot of those raids were 40-man raids. There was 40-man and there was 20-man, and then came the Burning Crusade, which is where we're at now, and they have most of them are all 25 mans, and there's two 10-man raids there. But you really don't see any 10-man guilds here with Wrath. We're gonna have the choice. We're gonna have two separate lockouts. I think they said there's gonna be two lockouts. So back in original there was two lockouts, and they said they're gonna continue to do two lockouts. So but so back in retail Wrath, you could have um 10 and 25 man separate lockouts, and then you could also have another lockout between heroic and normal. So they're getting away. You can have a 10-man and a 25-man lockout now, but it's in Wrath you're going to have to choose between normal or heroic for that lockout. So you could have 4 lockouts per week per raid. Before, between 10 and 25 man, they're going to only make it 2 between 10 and 25 man, and then you have to choose between heroic. So I knew there was something different, but anyway. So
I feel like my eyes just cross-eyed themselves in their brain. I'm like, what is going
it's confusing.
on?
I know.
Because
But
lockout just means you only have one attempt per week.
correct, exactly.
Okay.
So
like what?
So the reason I bring that up is because we're gonna see another shift in guilds. I think when Wrath Classic comes out, we're gonna see there right now in Burning Crusade, there's no 10-man guilds, right? They're all 25-man guilds.
So
Um,
that was my question. You guys capped the guild at like 25 people, basically?
so no, so most of the guilds right now are 25 player, and that I would say over 75% of the guilds have one raid team with whatever nights of the week they choose, and they'll probably have about 30, I would say, people on their roster. And people call out. Nailing down 25 people is hard to do, so they have people that are backups or fill-ins, and a lot of times they'll post a roster of who's going to be going. That they'll have like a sign up on the Discord, and anybody who signs up, they'll then put that into a roster of this is who's going to be going on Tuesday. And from there you go. So I would say most guilds right now are 30 people in them, for a 25 player raid, obviously. But I see that shifting in Wrath too. There's going to be some guilds that are like 10 man, and when you're only nailing down 10 people, it's a little easier for attendance. So they probably will strictly have like 10 people on their roster. And then other ones will stick with the 25 man and have about 25 to 30 people in their guild. Now, there are some guilds that like Sweat that run 2 different raid teams. So they probably have about 2 raid teams is obviously 50 people, but a large majority of that second team is people on the first team on their other characters. So that Sweat probably has about 40 to 50 active members in it. So to answer your question, I think that smaller guilds are better because, like you said, with that, what did you call it? A switch, running switches or whatever with multiple different teams. You don't see more than about 2 25-man groups per guild right now. So I'd say about 50 is about the cap to a raiding guild. Now there's some leveling guilds, I know you have some experience with those lately that just invite people and they all quest and do stuff together. Those might have more, but as far as raiding guilds, I'd say with one team 25 to 30 and with 2 teams 40 to 50.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I've been super curious about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cause I didn't understand, like, cause there's so many different guild names, and I was like, I don't know. It's just so interesting. There's a different flavor for your fair of play. Is like some guilds, like what we're talking about. And I think what I gravitate towards, or at least I did with EverQuest, like I want to be playing at the highest level with the best parsers that there are. Like I want to be, and I've since learned for me to like slow my roll, because I go extra, and it's like I burn myself out.
So I've had to do that lately here too. I totally get it. Absolutely.
Yeah, and which is I wanted to ask you, because I wanted to go back a little bit. I want to go back to your middle school days. And I would like your perspective of what it was like integrating your play in the world of Warcraft with your play in the world of our lives.
Back in middle school?
Yeah, I want to know, I want to give me like a timeline of where you were at and what it was like, from 5th grade, starting with Burning Crusade when you first got it. And if you could just go through the expansions and how you felt when they released, and how much time you were playing, and like where you were at in your life.
Absolutely. So part of the reason I said at the beginning, I joined right when Burning Crusade came out, and it took some time. Like that character got banned, obviously, and then I had to re-level, and leveling wasn't what it is today either. Leveling back then took a lot more time. We touched on that too. So I never really I got to level 70 in the Burning Crusade while it was active. But I never really got to experience the rating. I was a lot more not very hardcore back then. I think I did the raids that we've recently done once or twice, but never really played. And so when Wrath came out, is when I really started playing a little harder. Like I said, I kind of hopped around with schools, and the same crew didn't play. That was mainly in the Burning Crusade. But I had one friend that I kept in touch with from school, and we still played a lot together. And then his mom made him quit later down the road, and I was devastated, dude. I was pissed. I was like, oh my God, Evan's not playing anymore. What are we going to do, dude? it was a bad day.
Was he not brushing his teeth, not doing his
Dude,
schoolwork?
he was no, dude, he was pretty jade.
I love it. That's why I love Asmongold, dude. Is he's just like so proud of his degeneracy, dude. It's so
He
great.
loves it. He wears it like a badge, dude.
We were there, dude. I was covered in piss for a while, dude. Just
Yeah,
gaming.
yeah. Yeah, so Evan had to quit, but no, that's when I joined like a more serious guild, and as I mentioned in the other, question too, I joined a guild called Serious Business. But I joined a guild in Wrath called Serious Business, and that was the one I was talking about more recently. And it's funny. I actually me and the guild master of that guild are still friends on Facebook. He lives in Pensacola. And like I said, he helped me when I kind of like started raid leading and helped me kind of take that off. Good dude, and so I would say around Wrath of the Lich King is when I started raiding pretty hardcore. And like I said, I was bouncing around to a lot of different schools, and I couldn't, since I was doing that, I made friends, but, then I'd be in another place, and it was just, it's hard to keep track of everybody. So Wrath is really when I started playing the most. And I wouldn't say the most. It was when I started dipping my toes into hardcore raiding, but not playing all the time and not having a lot of different characters. And then with Cataclysm, which was the next expansion after Wrath, and I do think I should mention too that Asmon Gold has a video of like most popular video games of all time, and WoW makes the top 10 list for like easily over a decade. But I think it's known that Wrath of the Lich King was like the peak. Like it continued to grow. Wrath of the Lich King was a very, very probably the most popular WoW expansion there's ever been. And it peaked out there and got up to like what, almost 20 million players, I think. And then it kind of started to dip back down. But Cataclysm was the one following that, and that was where I really, I think, started to become a little more hardcore. I That's when I started to have multiple characters with good gear. I had kind of built a name for myself, raid leading at the end of Wrath of the Lich King, doing the gold bids or the GDKPs as they're called now. And so people still knew about me in Cataclysm. So I had a whole bunch of people. Before there was Discord, I had my own Ventrilo server, and it was my gold bidding Ventrilo server. And in Kata, I leveled. I pretty much had every class. Kata was pretty extreme, where I had, I think, one of every class, maybe except everything except a rogue. I think, all in pretty decent gear. Probably not as good as gear as they all have now. But they. I also ran a guild then as well. I had met this other guy who we're also, he's actually the one that got me to come back for Classic WoW. So me and this guy, his name's Noah. He actually lives in Kansas City, which is not far from where Brooke lives. I've actually met up with him in real life once or twice when I've been out there.
Oh,
But
cool.
yeah, but I met up with him, and he had come from a 10-man guild, and then he had a free 25-man lockout. So he would come to my runs with his 25-man lockout, and we met through my runs, and we decided to make a 10-man guild for Cataclysm. So Cataclysm held on to that. You can be a 10, you can do the same raid with 10 or 25 people, and then therefore there were 10 and 25-man guilds. So we made a 10-man guild, me and Noah, and we raided pretty much all of Cataclysm. Like I said, had multiple characters. We would sometimes do 2 or 3 raids a week and continue to do the GDKPs as well. And we actually finished that expansion, Cataclysm, 19th on the server, and we were on the Storm Rage server at that point, which was in like the top 5 best servers of all time. So we had a very successful guild in Cataclysm.
Was it PvP or normal?
The server,
Yeah.
It was a normal server.
Okay.
This is my first time on a PvP server. I have mixed feelings about it, but I do.
It is insane.
It's a shit show, you
It
know.
really is.
It's I have mixed feelings on it. Like it's really fun at times, and then it's super annoying at times. I think it's often more annoying than it is fun, but in order to be on, that's just how it like. I think the other two servers that are ahead of Grobbulus are also PvP. So there's not a whole lot of like if you're on a good server in Classic, it tends to be a PvP server.
The
But that was
thing,
new. That was new to me coming back too.
yeah, I've never really gone in the way I've gone in now in a PvP
Right.
environment. And the
Mm-hmm.
thing I like about it is it feels like when I progress, there's more weight to it because at the end of the day, if I feel up for it, I can just go run around the world and just attack people. Like
Absolutely.
just
Absolutely.
that the options there, like you can power swing over people if you want to. Like
Mhm.
it
You
kind of
go to the
makes
lower.
it makes it like it gearing up and getting gearing up your character has more value to it because I'm less threatened by being being attacked by someone.
Yeah, my things in the wild. It does. It adds a whole nother element to it. Like back on the server I was on then, you could it was a on all the plane servers, you can it's up to the player. You can toggle on or off PvP.
Oh
So
right.
if you were out in the wild, you could see, oh, that guy's you could have yours off and nobody could attack you. But if you saw a horde with it set that had it set to on, you could go attack them and it would just turn yours on, you
Dude,
know?
it creates these really cool experiences, man. Like I'll be out there and I'll be looking at someone. We'll be questing in the same area and we're like, are we gonna do this, dude? Or are we
Yeah,
what are we
yeah,
gonna
you totally
do?
should, dude. Or it happens a lot when you're at level 70 and you're at, you know how there's a summoning stone for each dungeon that
Oh,
you
it's
go to.
miserable,
So
dude.
like
It's miserable.
they'll be summoning or you'll be summoning and you're like, can I do this? Or are they gonna kind of attack
Are
me?
we gonna let each other play or are we gonna duke it
And you
out? Like
can't
what do
talk to them. Like it shows that text comes through, but it puts it in another language. So it's like comes out all jumbled. And you're like,
dude,
what the hell?
it heightens my immersion because like I'm riding my horse through like the bog and I
Yeah.
see this horde undead and I click to see who it is. It's a rogue coming near me and we pass each other on the road and I got my head on a swivel, dude. I've got my camera faced the other way to see what he does.
Right.
He stops his route and immediately starts coming after me and I just instantly fear him, dude. I'm like, we're going to town, dude. I don't even want
Look,
to figure out what you want.
if you're
You're
making a
dead.
beeline for me, it's on,
It's
right? Yeah,
on, dude.
it's
And
on.
like it's so fun because you have to learn like the slightest move. Yeah, I mean, I was super excited. We're talking PvP now. I was so excited I forgot to press record. we were we were
Dude,
going.
well, what I mentioned was just that like PvP,
It's a different game.
it's a
PvP.
whole PvP is a whole nother game than PvE, and I'm not as great at PvP, but I haven't tried to put in as much effort as I have to PvP into PvE. And you know, like I was saying, Adam hopped into one of the raids I was leading the last 2 weeks, and he it probably seemed fast paced. It probably seemed like another language, you know, just some of the stuff I was saying. But PVE is actually very slow paced compared to PvP. Like PvP is so fast paced on your toes. It's actually crazy, and um you know it's almost a bigger achievement in the game to achieve like a high rank in PvP than it would be to like finish the end game boss in PvE because it's so hard. It's so many less players have achieved that than they have like
Yeah,
the raids.
from what I've learned, they bottleneck it, so only a certain number of players can achieve. I think 14 is the highest rank, Grandmaster or Grand Marshal or something.
Right, right.
And every week, a new selection of maybe 20 players get to have that rank based on their kills and their honors they made that week.
That's true. And then there's a whole nother aspect where it's just called arena, and so you can queue for twos, threes, or five. So that means you and a buddy, you and two other buddies, or you and a team of four other people can go just in an arena with that many other people. And I mean, that's what I'm talking about with the whole nother language. Like I've joined some just for fun or like to try to get an item or whatever, and like I've been in there with some of the real pros, and it's just some of the stuff they're saying is foreign to me. Obviously, there's abilities. You know, I mentioned this before it was recording too. Is like there's abilities that you don't ever use in PvE that every class has is that you only use in PvP. Like you forget that priests also have a fear. It's not just warlocks. You're like, where the hell did that come from? But you know, it's also like as far as the other language, you know, they're stunning you, they're slowing you down, they're you know, and there's trinkets and stuff to pop out of that, but you want to use it on the right ability, and that's just the kind of stuff that I can't really keep up with. It's like, oh well, I use my 2 minute, I can only do this every 2 minutes, and I used it to get out of this stun, but I should have waited and used it for the longer stun. You know, they're like, oh, just sit that stun, just sit that stun. It's like, well, you know, it's just
Yeah,
so
you
much
have
more
to.
fast paced. You
You
know,
have it's so fast paced. You have to know what your character can do, and then you have to know what all the other classes can do, and the cooldowns that they have for the abilities that are gonna cause the threat to you.
exactly.
It's wild. I can't even like I don't even know, dude. Like I'm having
Yeah,
so much fun trying to just figure out my place in this world of Warcraft. And it's like, what kind of how do I want to go to the PvP route? But I'm like you. I like doing the raids. I like seeing the content. I like, you know, I like yeah, I like doing the teamwork stuff, but the PvP aspect, it gives me a sense. The thing that's so interesting for me playing through the game is it's giving me these heightened states of emotion that I don't experience in the real world.
right.
I don't ever feel bad about something I may do throughout my day,
Yeah,
but I'll loot something in a group that is an upgrade and realize I forgot to ask and feel terrible for like
yeah,
the whole night.
yeah. Or just the fact of getting it to drop. Like there, one of the guys we were in the caravan with last night. Like there was an item in Black Temple, and he was there. He has multiple characters, and he was a rep paladin, and there was this best in slot weapon called Torch of the Damned, right? And every he went in there, he never misses a raid day. You know, he's there every day. His name's Zios, and he was the tank in there actually, and he has two paladins. He has one that plays protection, and one that plays rep, but Torch of the Damned. He never misses a raid day. He'd be there every week on his paladin. It never dropped, right? And then every time we'd go in there in the second team, or he'd be on a different character, it would sometimes drop, and he would never be on the right one. So he never got it, you know. And so
Hmm.
it's that kind of, it's like, damn, is it going to drop? Well, is it, if it drops, am I going to win it? And that's part of the reason I like, you know me too. Like I'm all about instant gratification. So like that's why I like a GDKP. So if it actually drops, then I'm, you know, like I like to secure the bag so that I'm gonna win it. You know what I'm saying?
Oh
Yeah,
yeah. Yeah,
yeah,
that is because if you have the most gold in the GDKP, you can just outbid it.
yeah, dude. I've been in there where, so the warglaives, like I was talking about with Turch before, like what they do with those, since you can only use them on a rogue and on a warrior, they pre-sell them, but they still, if they do drop, that money still go towards the pot. And when it first started, when that content first came out and people were GDKPing it, those glaives were getting pre-sold for like 110,000 per glaive. So
Wow.
I was in one, you know, run where it dropped, just healing, and the payout was like 6 or 7 thousand gold per person. So that means 7,000 times 25, you know, whatever that is how much gold was in the pot. It's crazy.
And so someone's signing up like with like a contract that says basically I'm willing to pay this amount if it drops.
Absolutely. Like, and it's all, most of that's done through Discord. Like some of these gold bid Discords that I'm in have like a Warglaves bidding channel. So people would, you know, rogues and warriors would be in that Discord, and they'd say, okay, it closes at noon on, or 1 o'clock on Thursday, and whoever puts in the highest bid there, it gets pre-sold for that much.
Dude, this is what's so cool about the game too, man. It's like the
Right.
underlying the little gambling, like the chances of things, rolling dice to figure out if you win it. Like
Yeah.
I literally I'm 34 years old. I move around society. and I don't see anything I want ever. Like there's
Right.
nothing I ever see where I'm like, oh, I wish I had that. How do
Gotta
I
have
get
it.
that?
Right. Right.
But in the game, dude, I'll be on like a level 21 priest, and then something sweet will drop in Dead Mines, and I'll be like, oh my god, I
Yeah.
gotta win the role.
Or if you're like me, I spend a lot of time just like in the city inspecting people. Like, at
Just
your point,
looking at them.
when I was at your point in the game, I'd be like, "Ooh, I want that." But now I'm at the point where I'm like, "Okay, they've got all the good gear. What enchants and gems do they have in there? Do they have the right stuff? Are they smart or are they not smart? Like
Right,
stuff
right,
like that."
right. Yeah, because
Yeah.
you actually have to scan people before they join your pickup raids and stuff. Yeah.
Right. Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, one of the things I like about the experience is the sense of excitement that can occur while playing. And I have the Atlas loot, so I can see what drops on the
Mm-hmm.
dungeons, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't look at it because I like not knowing. I like going in and if once you know that a boss doesn't have anything you can use, you don't care. You're just like, oh, I guess we got to kill this guy.
Get this one to get to the. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly.
But yeah,
Yeah.
so yeah. But yeah, this dude, I wanted before we close up, I wanted to get your approach to the new expansion. Like, how are you like what's gonna happen? I don't know anything. Like, I'm
Right.
just now learning. I don't even think I'm hardly learning anything other than which places to avoid at which times so I don't get ganked.
Right, right. Well, and it's a lot to take into. Like you need to be, approaching level 70. You need to be, you're getting some of that gear. And
Dude,
and and,
shout
and
out to everyone in Sweat, by the way, for last night and the week before, dude. That was
yeah,
bad.
dude.
Dude, I got a bank full. I've got like 12 purples in the bank just waiting for me to hit 70.
Right
It's
on. I know, dude.
crazy.
It is. It's awesome. That's what I love. I love like gearing a new character as soon as I get to 70. But it's interesting on your first one because there's so much, and like you're at a very pivotal point too because things are about to change. So um got a timeline here on my phone. So things are going to look drastically different in just under 2 weeks. So it'll be, where is it
Yeah,
at?
while you're looking for it, let me share what I know. From what I understand, there's a pre-patch that comes out in 13 days or 10 days whenever you hear this podcast, or we're already there if you heard it in the future. Anyway,
August 30th, kind of pulled up. Yeah.
August or so that when the pre-patch drops, and this is what I understand, is it changes it implements all the new mechanics, talent systems. Do you know the depth more than that? Because I don't know much
So,
more than that.
so there's going to be a lot of change. So they'll come out with a new phase and a new patch, and they'll add some new things, but it doesn't look as drastic as this. This is called a pre-patch. So before the expansion comes out, they're pretty much adding all the expansion in right now. So then when it releases, it'll be easier. But pretty much, there's a lot of changes that happen between Burning Crusade and between Wrath of the Lich King. So, like for example, right now, you know, casters and healers have different stats. Like there's some items that say it's weird. It's kind of right now it's weird. So like healing items will say increases your healing by 81 and your spell damage by 23, and then spell damage items will say increases your spell damage and healing by 46 or something. So it's very weird how it is right now. So what they've done is completely scratched that, and they've just made all healers and caster items have spell power, which is going to be the same thing.
Will it change the items I have on now?
Yeah, it will. It'll become spell power. So instead of saying, how the stat, it's got intellect and whatever, and then it'll also say, equip, increase your spell hit rate, or it'll, instead of saying it'll increase your spell damage and healing, it'll say increases your spell power by this much. So
That's
that's one big,
amazing.
yeah,
That's amazing that they can go through like the itinerary of every item and change that.
right. It is. It's crazy. And so that's one big change. You're going to see a lot of changes to the current gear that we have. You're obviously going to be able to create a new class, which is Death Knights, which is going to be a melee class. It's going to be tanking or a melee DPS.
Can't wait for that, dude. That's gonna be fun.
Yeah, that's gonna. I can see you playing a Death Knight for
Oh
sure.
man, I'm gonna rip it up, dude. It's gonna be awesome.
And then the biggest thing is going to be to the talent trees, which also affects your spells. So they're gonna do. I can't say exactly which ones, but they're gonna do away with some spells, and they're also going to add some new spells and stuff like that. So, since you're going to be able to level from 70 to 80, um, you're going to see more talents, new spells you can learn, and kind of them scrapping some of the old spells you don't use as much, or scrapping one of the old spells and merging it with one of the new ones or attacks or something like that. So it's a lot of change definitely happening. We've got the pre-patch happening August 30th, and then they just kind of have some like hype events going on for the first half of September. They're calling them pretty much the zombie invasion. It says, and then September 26th will be the launch. And then that they're giving you 9 days to level up, and October 6th will be the release of the first raids of Wrath of the Lich King.
So there's a couple questions that I have.
Yeah.
The so the pre-patch changes that are coming in, will that change like the experience rates too? How quickly you level?
So you won't be able to level until you won't be able to level in pre-patch. You'll be able to create a Death Knight and get it to 70 and then level it when Wrath comes out. But no, they're actually saying, nobody really knows yet, that it's going to be harder to level from 70 to 8. It's going to take more time, not harder, to level from 70 to 80 than it did from 60 to 70. So it shouldn't change the amount of experience. Like, instead of going back and like when you get level 70, you're not going to really want to go to raids to get experience. When that new expansion comes out, you don't really want to go raid to get experience, because there's so many players, the experience gets divided up. You don't get a lot of experience. You want to go to those new zones, those new dungeons, those new quests in the new zones to get the most experience that you can.
So this is yeah, this is gonna be interesting. I want to. So from what I can gather about this expansion, Wrath of the Lich King, I haven't seen hardly any people that are upset about the changes. What is the general sentiment? It seems like that this is an overall improvement to the state of the game. Are there people that are not going to like it? Like, what are the pros and cons?
So that's a great question. So, and obviously it's up to every individual. So I think generally, um, the larger percentage is going to be more excited. I kind of mentioned before that Wrath of the Lich King was the peak of retail before, right? Like that was when they had their most players. So I think the overall state of the game will be improved. The thing that's interesting is they veered off from it a little bit. Like there's some changes in Burning Crusade that we're playing now that were different from when Burning Crusade was real, that they just think make the game better. So they want to keep it as close to classic as possible. But like two examples that come to mind are guild banks. So if your guild has a bank where you can store a bunch of stuff in, those were not around until like Cataclysm before, but they've put them in for Burning Crusade Classic. And then another change was back in original Burning Crusade, you couldn't get your first mount until level 40, and you can now get it at level 30. So there's a few minor changes like that they've made that they're also doing for Wrath of the Lich King, where a lot of the people, some of the people are, they're happy with like the changes to spells and that you get new, these better, some of the better talents and stuff are coming out, but they're not as happy about that. Like Blizzard has recently said, for example, that I don't know if you heard us last night in Karazhan, we were saying we're going to wait and pull this boss in 2 minutes so that Lust is back up. It's called Bloodlust on the Horde, and it's called Heroism on the Alliance. It's the same spell, and every 10 minutes you get 30% increased haste in your party for 40 seconds. It's like a big buff. It's how people that are on this top damage overall for the server, that's the type of research they do. They do research to figure out when to use their potions, when to use, their heroisms and whatever. So, for example, with heroism, what they're doing is right now, some of the like it's on a 10-minute cooldown. So if you go and you're fighting a boss and you use heroism and then you wipe and you come back in, sometimes it's still on cooldown. Like you just wait around for it to come back up before you pull the boss again. So with Wrath, they're trying to, what it's on, they're going to, if you have that same experience in Wrath where you go and you're trying to progress on and kill a boss on a fight, and you're waiting on heroism to come back up, every time you wipe, the heroism cooldown will be reset. So there's just some real, I don't know what you want to call them, picky folks who Blizzard's implementing that to try to make it easier.
I don't think those people actually exist. I'll say this right now publicly on the air. I don't think any of those people actually exist. I think people just like to stir the pot because they just want to
critique it.
Yeah, they just want to get responses and be the other side. It's like, come on, you don't want to sit there and have to wait 10 extra minutes when you're gonna be playing anyway. Like,
well, that's what I'm thinking. Some of these people that I've met playing, they're so like, well, it's not exactly the same as it used to be, because of little changes like that are supposed to make it easier.
Dude, these are quality of life improvements, man. I feel strongly about. They've made some great decisions here. They have. And I'll be the first to say, and I like that we're on a forum now where we can talk and nobody can rebuttal here. But I'll be the first to say, I'm glad that we're not doing the dungeon finder instant group thing, man. I don't want to have to. I want to talk to people. I want to be, like reputation, social credit, all that stuff matters.
And so that was one change that came out during the middle of Wrath that will not be coming back. But they still, that came out during Wrath, the dungeon finder that they still use very heavily in retail. And it definitely made, not that it was a bad decision. It changed the game. So now people can,
It changed the landscape of multiplayer online gaming. One thing. I don't know if that had existed before.
Right.
And once they added the button that you can click that say, I'm DPS looking for group for this dungeon, and it automatically gets you the group and then teleports you to where you need to go.
Right.
Wow. That was a game changer.
It just made the game, and it made it easier, and people don't want easier. And I think that's why these people are complaining about, that heroism change, for example. They play classic because they don't want it to be easier. It's different from retail. And I think obviously they're getting into the nitty gritty there with something that makes the quality of life better, but they're so stuck on Blizzard keeps implementing these and it's going to start to look like retail again, and I do think Blizzard got a little bit of it did change online gaming, which is huge, but it also took away from why people play classic now, is because it got so much easier,
That's what I noticed playing through this since I've been playing, is the time it takes to travel makes the world seem large. It makes it feel like a world. If I'm instantly teleporting places all the time,
mm-hmm.
I don't know my place in the world. I don't see myself as, it's so cool because I'm just a little insignificant, sometimes a ghost character when I'm dead, roaming this planet, trying to get from here to there. That to me, that creates the immersion, is like knowing that there's real space and time.
Yeah. And somebody has, we were just talking about the summoning stones with the horde. Like, are they going to gank me while I'm summoning? You can just teleport there in retail where it's like at least 2 people from your raid have to go to the stone and manually summon everybody, which does take more time, but it's also it's a whole thing. Who are the people that are getting on early and getting to the stone? They're good raiders to have, stuff like that.
To be in a raid or be in a group and be willing to travel to summon everyone else is a huge value add.
Exactly. And that's what retail's lost, I think. Now it's just that's why it doesn't appeal to me as much anymore. I think that's the main reason.
I'll say that's the reason the whole MMORPG landscape is lost, is because everything's happening so quick. And there's just so I want to ask you, because we're getting close. I have to go get the boy from school,
Yeah, you're good.
We could keep going forever, but I want to know two things. I want to ask you what your plan is moving into Wrath. What's Sweat's plan moving into Wrath? How are you going to approach it? How much time are you going to play? Are you going to sequester? How are you going to do this? That's the first. The second, I want to say it so you can remember too, because I'll forget. But the second question is, I would really like to hear your experience in Cataclysm and why you left the game, like what expansion you left the game back in the day.
Yeah. So, all right. To answer your question about Wrath, and how hard I'm going to go, I think I got a little carried away in Burning Crusade, and so instead of what really carried me away was the GDKP and raid leading, like what I was doing with you. And so like when there was a point where every night of the week, I had a guild raid, and if there wasn't a guild raid, I was on my Discord posting a sign up to raid with the pug group. So like I had something every single night of the week, right? And I can't go that hard anymore. So my Sweat plans to hit the expansion pretty hard just during those 2, or if you're on both teams, 4 nights a week. Right now, I'm only on one team, which is good because at the beginning of expansion, like right now, we're only raiding Wednesdays instead of Wednesdays and Monday because we can clear it all on Wednesdays. But come next expansion, it's going to take Wednesday and Monday to clear everything because it'll be new. The gear won't be as good. So I'm going to stick to one team, raid those 2 nights a week. Still level all my characters. And try to gear up alts when I can. I think I'm going to be a little bit more focused on 1 or 2 characters rather than like 9 different classes in Wrath, which I think will be my priest and my shaman that I'm going to be more focused on getting to max level and getting geared up first, and not quite hitting it as hard as I did Wrath of the Lich King. 1, because my lifestyle just nowadays that's better for it, and also it is that I didn't get to raid in TBC when it was retail, like I was saying before, and I kind of missed that part, and I have raided most of all tiers of Wrath before, so it'll be doing it again, so I don't think there's as much of a need to. So yeah, that's the answer to the first question. And the second one, I would just say, at what point did I quit? So I like I talked about being the guild master. Me and Noah ran a guild in Cata. Mists of Pandaria was next, followed by Warlords of Draenor. Mists of Pandaria is when I really started to lose interest in kind of how easy things were getting, and you could kill an end boss and it still wouldn't mean that much. So I still rated a early Mists of Pandaria, and then it kind of quit. Obviously, real life circumstances kind of started stepping in at that point too, where I couldn't play as much anymore. I had other things on my agenda. And then Warlords of Draenor, I didn't play at all. I think Legion and then Battle for Azeroth both happened in the time I didn't play at all. And then Shadowlands is out now. I've dipped my toes back in. I feel like I'm a total noob at retail because it's a whole different game over in retail than I'm used to than in Classic is. It's kind of cool to check out. I went back to, since I enjoy healing so much, the other class they've added that can now heal in retail is Monk. So I went to make a Monk healer, and I've done a few dungeon looking for group finders and stuff with him, and it's fun. But like I said, it's just not the same game. And so back in November, when Noah, my buddy who I ran that guild with in Cataclysm, texted me, he's like, "Hey man, come hop on this WoW Classic." I got back in and just kind of hit it balls to the wall, Yeah. So yeah, I definitely plan on being active in Wrath of the Lich King, and I like my favorite part of the game. There's a hard to pick a favorite, but it's a double-edged sword because I think my favorite thing to do in there is have my Discord, and there's a lot of like power and control that comes along with it too, as crazy it is to say, but like you have people signing up for these raids, you get to go to the raid no matter what, and you just have to choose the best comp to go with you. But at the same time, that's when I was just like so heavily involved. I didn't have a lot of time for other stuff too. So, since I've kind of let that Discord server, it's still there, it's still around, and there's still people in it, but I've kind of let it go and haven't started posting as many signups as I used to. There's really not signups at all. Like when I play these days, I'm mostly getting on to raid with the guild, and that's it. Since you've been playing, I've done a few little extracurricular activities, but it's been pretty cool. But I think that's the main thing for me is I've made a name for, like, a lot of people know Tidder again now, like they did in retail, and they know me from like leading these raids. And so I know a lot of the other people that lead the GDKPs now too. And I think if I had time to make one, they would invite me and let me in and come on a character. But I think as far as me leading current tier of the GDKPs like I was doing before, I think that's what I've kind of got to let go under the rug for Wrath, just because it was so time consuming for me.
Well, you got, what do you have? Seven, you got 8 characters to level up to 80.
No, I got, yeah. Is it 8 or 9? I think I have 9. Yeah.
Yeah, that'll take some time.
That'll take some time for sure. So I think focusing on the, Sweat, the team I'm on with Sweat has me on. They just released the rosters this week for Wrath. Like, it has a new roster with people that are in the guild as Death Knights and as all these, like, what each group will look like. And they have me on my Shaman healing, which I love to do. So I will, going to level my Shaman first, then probably my Priests, and just kind of focus on those guys. And not having so many characters to keep up with will also be less time to see. Like right now, I'm set. It's like, well, I can log on any character. They're all of them are in the current or last tier's gear, so they're able to raid the most current tier of stuff and just be very versatile. So it took a lot of time to be able to get to that place, but now it's like, well, it's not necessarily that I'm bored. It's just like, well, trying to play a little less and free up some of my nights and only log in on raid nights. It's just like, well, I'm where I need to be. Like, but it'll take a lot of time to get to that point in Wrath of the Lich King.
Yeah, this is cool though, because then we could do some questing and dungeons
Absolutely.
and stuff while you're leveling up your main and your alts.
For sure, dude. Well, and dude, I'll be doing a lot of that like during the day, probably here from work too. So like, yeah, it'll.
Same, dude. Game Time USA over here, man.
That's right, dude. That's right. Absolutely,
dude. Well, this has been excellent. Anybody listening, thanks for listening. And yeah, I don't know. Anything else you want to add before we close up shop?
Well, for one, thank you for bearing with me being at work and having to mute a couple times. Sorry about that. I hate doing that and taking up time, and my bad on that. But yeah, dude, it's a fun game. It's obviously, I think, the best video game out there. It's so immersive, and it allows you to really just kind of break off from whatever's going on. And like I said, it's been a long road. Like I've been playing since 2006, and I've taken some very long breaks, obviously. But it's always been, it's always there, for you to go back to and just kind of check out. And, it's just like, there's always been something for people to check out, whether it's like read comic books or whatever. It's just like you can check out and literally step into another world and leave the real world behind, whether it's a tough day or whether you're bouncing around between schools and can't keep a solid friend group, growing up or whatever, So I definitely think it's a good game to check out. Me and Adam will be on there. We can help you out. Adam will tell you, man, you level a character and I'll get you geared right up. It's no problem.
Yeah, dude.
No problem at all. But it's a lot of fun and it's awesome, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyone listening that has any questions or is interested, you can email me at insidethemindseye@gmail.com. You can hit me up in game. I'm usually playing Zen Pones, ZENPWNZ, and Tidder, TIDDER.
Grobbulus Alliance.
Grobbulus, yeah, dude, f those hordes, dude. This is what we've got 2 minutes left before this closes, dude. But I don't understand this. Okay, I started making horde characters. I've got a 42 horde paladin, right? And I just can't stand the horde, dude. Like, I don't even want to, like, I'm on a line. I want to kill all of them.
I've never leveled a horde character, and I think the main reason for that is like I don't like if you're Alliance, you're in your city. It looks like a castle or just something normal that you might find in like old Renaissance or whatever. But the horde cities are all laid out like it's just a jumble. It's like hard to find anything. And I just don't like them, so I've never even given horde the shot. So I'm very anti horde.
Dude, it's visceral. Like, I'll see an Alliance player while I'm on horde, and I'll be like,
Yeah.
I'm not attacking them. Like, there's no way, dude. I don't.
Mm-hmm.
And it's weird. It's just so interesting psychologically, the dynamics, the us versus them. You know, all that stuff is like things I only imagine through war films or like stories or books. And it's like, I don't know. It's to me, you know, if you listen to the show or you go back to any of the other podcasts I have, I'm constantly talking about just weird philosophical shit. So to me, This has been like a total awesome learning experience about the nature of the mind and emotions and everything.
Yeah, well, dude, and thank you for the opportunity. I'm a big fan of podcasts. I've listened to a lot of podcasts myself, and I definitely think they're, becoming more popular than ever. So loved being on here. Thank you for the opportunity. There's more stuff I can talk about too if we ever come back. So
we'll come back. Hit us up. It's gonna shut us off. But I'll put some music for us. But hit us up if you want to play. Questions, comments, anything. Thank you so much, Tom Tidder.
Thank you, dude. Absolutely. I'll see you soon.